We are particularly honored to be here because this zip code, this very community, is one that has to deal firsthand with the effects of gun violence as it manifests itself around us. Just behind us in the alley last Memorial Day, a young man lost his life to gun violence. On Cypress, right behind the church, last fall, another lost his life to the same matter. Within 6 months of my being called to this pastorate, I was on the scene with a member family of a double homicide. They lost their niece. And then another member who is present today in 2011 lost her son. Women, these sisters are here, mothers of the movement, Annette and Geneva from the Chicago area, and they come to share the same story. It is something that is all too much real for many of us, and we are happy that the matter is now risen to the level of national prominence through this campaign season. And so with Secretary Clinton's being here, and with her passion, with her commitment, with her decades record of serving our community, of supporting the issues that matter to so many of us, we are certainly honored that she has come to share her agenda and to present to us and to hear the concerns of the community. And so we allow the Secretary to greet us, to address us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you, Pastor. Thank you for inviting us into your church to have this conversation. And as you rightly point out, this church is in a zip code that has seen too many lost lives. The epidemic of gun violence spares no one, but it is concentrated in areas that are short on hope and where we still face the effects of systemic racism. And too often, guns are used as a way of ending disputes, of settling scores, and oftentimes, no sense at all. I looked at some of the press coverage of some of the homicides over the last few years here in Milwaukee. I read about a 13-month-old baby just sitting in a house with a grandfather, shots coming through the door, murdering that little innocent child. A young girl in a playground not far from here, Pastor, right? Playing with her sister. Gunshots ringing out, and that little girl killed. The people in this church, and so many like you around Milwaukee, could probably stand and tell the stories yourselves. And we want to get to those stories in our conversation today. But we can't go on like this, my friends. We lose on average 90 people a day from gun violence. That is 33,000 people a year. If anything else, if a disease were killing 33,000 Americans a year, we would come together and say to ourselves, how do we deal with this, and how do we save lives? And that's what I am determined to do. You will hear from the two mothers sitting beside me, another mother who couldn't be here with us today, Maria Hamilton, who has courageously spoken out about the death of her son, Dontre Hamilton, in a police action here in Milwaukee. Couldn't be here, but is out talking to everyone who will listen to her about the need for criminal justice reform. of making sure that the people who are sworn to protect us do just that, and that they too don't automatically reach for their guns. You'll hear from Geneva Reedville, whose daughter, Sandra Bland, died in police custody in Texas. And Geneva is seeking justice, not only for her daughter, but for all people who should not be confronted, should not be arrested, and should not be thrown in jail for failing, as I recall, to signal a turn. You'll hear from Annette, Nance Holt, whose son, Blair, was on a bus, an honor student, on a bus with his friends in Chicago. And another young man who should have been in school, should have been studying for a better future for himself, instead was wielding a gun. And this young man, Blair, shielded one of his friends on that bus and ended up being killed. I'm going to keep talking about this throughout this campaign, and I pledge to you, if I'm so fortunate enough to be elected president, I'm going to keep talking about it and acting on it and working. And that includes taking on what is, as Gwen will tell you, the most powerful lobby in Washington. There are a lot of powerful lobbies, don't get me wrong. Wall Street, drugs, big oil, there's lots of powerful lobbies. Nothing is more powerful than the gun lobby. And that's why we need an agenda, and that's why I'm laying out one in this campaign. For comprehensive background checks, closing the gun show loophole, closing the online loophole, closing what's called now the Charleston loophole. It's called that because the young killer in Charleston, South Carolina, went to buy a gun, and there's a law that my opponent voted for which said at the end of 3 days, even if the background check is not completed, you get the gun. So when this young killer went back to get the gun at the end of 3 days, they didn't have the background check completed, because when it was completed, they would have seen they should not have sold him that gun under the law. But he did get his gun. And out of an act of racist hatred, went to the Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston. Since we are in this sanctuary, think about what those faithful people did when that young man showed up, a stranger in their midst. They welcomed him in. They made a place for him, as we are called to do in the scriptures. And he sat there for about an hour, as I recall, listening to the Bible lesson. And then he took out that gun and murdered 9 people. You know, the NRA always says, well, changing the laws won't stop all of the killings. I think if we stop any of the killings by changing the laws, that's a big step forward. The availability of guns has gone way too far. And the fact that gun makers and sellers are immune from liability because of a law I voted against, President Obama voted against when he was in the Senate, my opponent voted for. You can't hold these gun manufacturers and sellers liable. And Gwen will talk about what we need to do to stop some of these gun sellers. About what? 1% of all the gun sellers are responsible for more than half of the guns that are used in crimes. So we've got our work cut out for us. But let's not grow weary doing good, because in due time we will harvest if we stay focused. And the moms who demand action joined with the mothers who demand action. This needs to be a voting issue, not number 20 on the list, but number 1 on the list, especially in zip codes like this one. Every child deserves to have a healthy, happy life, regardless of the zip code he or she lives in. And so let's be committed to doing everything we can in our own ways to end this epidemic. And Gwen, I know you've got some specifics to tell us about.
I do. Thank you so much for joining us. This is so important. I want to thank Reverend Don Darius Butler and all of the ministers and everybody who's congregated here. I only have a couple of minutes, and so it's really hard to put everything I need to say out in 2 minutes. But I want you to know that, unfortunately, my stewardship and my representation of this community and my focus on gun violence is because of what's happening here. Every December 30th, I join and memorialize the victims of violent crime, and it has increased exponentially. Just last year, 2015, we had 152 homicides here in Milwaukee. We had the little candles for each homicide victim. 125 out of 152 of these homicides involved a gun. The most victims, African Americans. 61% of those killed were under the age of 30. And last year, 9 people under the age of 18 died from this gun violence. So this has moved me very deeply to look at what is happening within our own community. We have, for example, and I've been moved to work on several things that I think are important. First of all, I support everything that President Obama has been doing, but I have a bill called the Gun Dealer Accountability Act. Who knew, Madam Secretary, how easy it was to be in the business of selling guns without any accountability? We have a gun store right in this congressional district, used to be called Badger Outdoor. One of these stores where only 1% of all the gun stores in the entire United States, account for 57% of crime guns, including guns involved in cop shootings. And all the man had to do was transfer ownership to his son and change the name, change the sign on the door to Badger Guns. I am trying to make sure that we can put shops like this on probation for 2 years, that we can that the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Agency can come in and inventory, require them to inventory the guns that are there. Right now, they're not required to do that. Who knew that that was the case? The AFT officers are only allowed to inventory these gun shops once a year, no matter how rogue that gun shop might be. I was also inspired to do another bill to make sure that we disarm those folk who find themselves with orders of protection that have been filed against them, to be able to go and get their guns. I'm thinking of Zena Daniel, who lived in Brown Deer in this district, who went about her business at a salon in Brookfield with her other coworkers, fixing hair, doing nails, stuff we all enjoy doing on a Saturday afternoon, we as women. And her ex-husband went and bought a gun from off the internet, met the seller at a fast food restaurant parking lot, bought a gun and went and killed her. So I have put in a bill to sort of close that loophole, to be able to make sure we have 100% background checks, and anybody who's engaged in selling guns would have some accountability. And so I am so grateful to you, Madam Secretary, and can't wait until you become President of the United States. So, because this is a scourge in our community. And just wrapping up, I do want to, as I told you before, Maria Hamilton, as you know, is at a funeral of a loved one, but would love to have been here. But I also am working on doing some research on an initiative looking at the police training, inspired so much by her grief, and to see the way these women plow through this pain. So we are currently have some resources from the Justice Department, but beyond that, I want to look at police, not only the patterns and practices, but their training as we go forward.
Good morning. My name is Annette Nance Holt, and I drove in from Chicago this morning to be with you because this is a very important issue, and it's very dear to my heart, even before my only child was murdered. See, I continue to fight because I see all these young people out here. I'm fighting for you because you should have an opportunity to grow up, to be happy, to be healthy, to graduate from high school and college and have families. But the way it's set up right now, that's not happening in our communities. Majority of young men, 16 to 21, are dying or they're incarcerated. We got to do something. Something is wrong with what we're doing. We're not doing enough. You know, I applaud Secretary Clinton for reaching out to us because that other candidate on the Democratic side did not reach out to us. Now, I'm going to tell you, I think if you want my vote, you better work for it. She's working for our votes. I'm not going to give it to you just because you say you can do free college, because if my child is dead, he can't go to college. See, we got to get them to that point first. They got to graduate from high school. My son was 16. He was an honor student at Percy L. Julian High School. He did everything I asked him to do. He was the best child. If I had to buy a child, I would have bought him all over again. He was that kind of kid to me. He loved his mother and father. He loved his grandparents. He took care of a grandfather with Alzheimer's. You know, that's a young person. It's rare to see that. You know, and he gets on a bus coming home from school, going to his grandparents' store in Roseland, which is a crime-ridden neighborhood. And on this particular day, he was like, "Ma, I could take the bus because I was going to see The Color Purple." But I get a call that my son's been shot by his cousin who goes to a magnet school, and he says, and I'm like, no, he's going to, you know, he's at school, he's okay. And I get that call, and something in me was like, something is wrong, and you know when you feel that. And I called his dad, who's a cop, and I said, "Ron, something is wrong with Blair." And he's like, "Who is this?" I'm like, "It's Annette, it's Annette." At this particular time, Blair had his dad getting a badge. I had been promoted to captain of the Chicago Fire Department at that time. And Blair was so proud, he had his dad give me a replica badge. Now, we divorced, so you know, that boy really told his dad, "I want my mom to have this." And while he's standing there, his son is fighting for his life. And I called my mom at the store. She's like, "Baby," she didn't even know who I was. She's like, "He's okay. He's okay." And I'm like, "No, Ma, something's wrong." And I'm driving, trying to get to my baby, because I know I work in that district. And I call the firehouses. They go, "Cap, it's okay, it's okay." And I'm like, "No, something's wrong." And I get to this first hospital, and all these young people, 5 young people were shot that day. 5. by a teenager who boarded a public bus. All these kids doing what we ask them to do every day, get an education, do the right thing. And I get there, and they say he's not there, so my heart sank, because I knew the next hospital was a trauma center. And I get there, and they say, yeah, he's been shot. And I tell you, everything just went out the door for me, because I was like, how could this happen? How could this happen in America? How could this happen to a firefighter and a police officer who raised their child to be a good kid, a loving, respectful young person who had hopes and dreams, who wanted to go to college? How could this happen to my child in America? You know, I did everything. This one day, I let him take the bus. I never let him take the bus. One day. And we live with that for the rest of our lives. And I know we can't change that, but, you know, that shouldn't be my reality. That should be no mother or father's reality in America. So my son didn't make it, but 4 other young people did live as a result of, but they're traumatized behind this. You know, and a teenager with a gun is the one who did it. He got on the bus and shot on a crowded public bus to the back of the bus to shoot another gang member. For what? And he got the gun from another teenager who they had arrested the day before, but they let him go. So this is what we're dealing with. And I'm just saying, I mean, church people, not in church, whatever you are, community organizers, not in the community, we all have to stand together. We all have to hold hands and change this. This cannot continue. This is not what America is about. This is not what Chicago and Detroit and Milwaukee, all of our urban communities, because we have a great history and we come from a lot of struggle. And people did not die for us to end up like this right now. So I'm going to stop with that and say, if you can do anything, one thing you need to do is vote. Vote. And don't go for the okie doke, promises that people can make that they can't keep. Sounds good, but don't work. So I stand with Secretary Clinton, and I thank her for reaching out to us. We've met with her numerous times. I will stand with her anywhere because I know she can do this. And I'll tell you, I cannot wait to see our first woman president. We will know.
All right. I am Geneva Reed Bill, Sandra Bland's mama, and I'm looking across the church, and I said, what's wrong with these people? You know, I go across the country, and folk are all frowned up. You in the house of the Lord. Y'all better shout, because I know I will. I'm telling you, when you go through something like this, and the Lord lets you keep your mind. Hold on. Hey, look. Hey, listen. I have been all over the place, and I tell people when they say, God, your strength is something else. No, I am just letting him put his super on my natural. And so when he allows you to go through something like this, and you are still standing, and when people say you need to be quiet, and when people say you're going to interrupt the case, I don't care. I'm going to keep talking, because let's get this very clear. Let's get it clear. Media, do this for me. Understand. 8 months later, I do not believe that my daughter killed herself. I don't believe that. Okay, so let's start right there, all right? So I will say to you, Sandy would have been 29 on Super Bowl Sunday. So when folk were all watching and doing all of what they were doing on that day, we were at the cemetery. And so we had a celebration, because I know that if God allowed it and he kept me through it, something awesome is going to come out of it. And so I need to ask, everybody in the room has seen this tape, Sandy Bland's tape, right? By show of hands, yes? Did you all also know that there were 6 other young women who died in jails across the country in the month of July, 2015? That is what the Sandra Bland movement is about. There were 6 other young ladies who died, various ages 18 to 50, in police custody. I would ask that you go home and Google these 6 other women that died July 2015. We're not talking about a year, we're not talking about months, we're talking about 1 month, okay? So you had Kendra Chapman, 18. You had Joyce Cornell, 50. You had Alexis McGovern, whose family was upstairs paying her bail and she was downstairs in the infirmary dead, all right? You had Sarah Lee Circlebear. These are 4 names that I'm giving you because I want you to go look for the other 2. Everybody's not killing themselves, okay? There is not justice for us right now. It's actually just us who's not getting the justice, okay? And so when I say to you today, there is no type of pain that you can describe other than getting a phone call and you being 1,000 miles away, 1,000, and somebody saying to you, your child is no longer here. Now, this is the child that we just came back from a road trip, okay, that Monday. She got the call about a job interview that Wednesday, drove down, had the interview, got the job. And this particular day she was stopped, she was leaving the school on her way to Walmart. We talked. We shouted about it, praised about it. I'm excited. She's ready, right? So she gets pulled over by an overzealous officer who had a problem that day, apparently. And so I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what you hear about marijuana. I don't care what all of that is a distraction because I don't care if she smoked a tree, okay? That's got nothing to do with what occurred to her in that jail. Understand? Which she never should have been in anyway. And let's be very clear, all these numerous calls she was supposed to make and the log was supposed to be available, there was no log available to me, okay? I do not have her cell phone. I do not have her personal belongings. I do not have anything of hers at this time, 8 months later. And you think I'm gonna shut up? Absolutely not, okay? So what I will say to you is, there's 5 seasons in all of our lives. It is winter, spring, summer, fall, and the season of shut up and sit down. So when this first happened, I was in that season to shut up and sit down. You might have seen my daughter, Sharon Cooper. She was the one going around, and she was the face for the family because I was in the house looking half crazy. I'm looking like Don King and Cornel West by the head, okay? And so had I come out at that time, you all would have met the inner Shaniqua. So I could not come out at that time. And so in that season, I had to stay in that word. I'm like, God, I've been worshiping you more than 30 years. Man, come on, this is not right. This is not right. And he took me straight to Psalm 136, where he talked about his mercy enduring forever. Yeah. And so as I kept on going, I said, okay, Job lost 10 babies in a day. David and Bathsheba had a baby, didn't even get a name, gone in 7 days. The Lord tells Ezekiel, I'm going to take the love of your life, and you better not cry. Then you turn around and you get Rizpah in 2 Samuel. Both sons hung. That lady set up camp and said, I'm going to sit here until you take my boys down. You want to talk about the power of a praying mother. You want to talk about the power of a mother who knows the master, okay? So when you all see me, you better know, oh, I know him. Because if you're talking about you know him and something like this hits your family, you better know him for real. This is not funny. It is not pleasant. And so when you get backlash from people who are saying that you're going around and you're parading, you're being pimped by the secretary, you all ain't nobody pimping me. Okay? It's ridiculous. None of us are being exploited. Myself, Mother Holt, Sabrina Fulton, Gwen Carr, Lucy McBath, Who in the heck is going to exploit us? So let's get that clear. That's number one. Number two, know that this woman right here, she is the most qualified.
Yes.
She is the most qualified, okay? You talk about former first lady. You talk about secretary. You talk about senator. The girl is bad, okay? Now, I'm telling you this because she contacted us, had us sit with her at Sweet Maple Restaurant in Chicago. No media, no. Nobody was able to be there but us. We're at this round table, it's 12 families. We're supposed to meet with her for 30 minutes, right? So she comes in, you know, you're like, oh my God, this is secretary, oh Jesus, you know. But she comes in just as cool and calm. She sat down. She knew all of our stories. She allowed us to tell about our children. This half-hour meeting turned into 2 hours, and she was late for a function. Didn't rush us, none of that. So we got an opportunity to share some things with her, to share with her what we would like to see with criminal justice reform and all of that. But more than that, this lady, this one right here, she's sitting there and she's taking notes. Not her person to the left, not her person. She was taking her own notes. And she said, you know, I'm going to follow up with you guys. Not only did she follow up, she followed up and followed up and followed up, okay? Personal letter to me after the no indictment on my daughter's death. Another letter, holiday time. I know this is your first holiday without your baby. Just know I'm thinking about you, okay? Then we get the invite to the Democratic National Convention. She didn't say a word. She didn't announce it. Nobody knew she had us there. I'm sitting behind Donna Brazile in front of Cornel West, okay? Next to Bernie Sanders' daughter-in-law, son, and wife, okay? They had no idea this was my girl at the time, right? So, I'm telling you. So when this lady here said, what would you like to see happen? I said, I want justice. I want justice for my baby. And she is on the case. And when the next individual comes up to you, because I've been going across the country and I've been listening to people, the young people in general, and they say, well, I don't know, how can you vote for Hillary? She lied. I said, girl, did she lie to you? Okay? And while you're talking about something that happened when her husband was the president, because she was first lady at that time, but she has apologized for those actions. And I will tell you, if I was to be held accountable for everything my man did, whoa, we'd have a problem. Okay? So hold on. Hold it. You're right, girl. Hey, so I'm here to tell you all today, there is no option not to vote. There is no reason you shouldn't drive up on the corner where the young man is standing with his pants hanging down. If he is 18 or over, take his behind with you and make him vote.
That's right.
Now, media, get it right. I didn't say vote for Hillary, but I am. But make that young man understand people died for him.
That's right.
Make them understand that. And in this time frame, I used to tell people, I endorsed Hillary February 17th, somewhere around there in Chicago. And I told them back then, it takes 9 months to deliver a baby. We passed the first trimester almost. So this baby has got to come forth. And she's got to come forth with yours, and your vote. It doesn't matter that her skin does not look like mine.
That's right. That's right.
She is about the business. You understand? She is the most qualified, the best candidate for the job. And go back. All you have to do, check out HillaryClinton.com. And anyone who can sit through a questioning session of a little over 11 hours is a bad sister. Okay? So I'm telling you today, make your vote count. And understand that if you don't vote, you will catapult the wrong individual into office. If that occurs, you shut your mouth. Don't you complain. You say nothing. You understand? I'm done.
such remarkable character and fortitude and courage of these sisters to share their stories. Pastors are here with members of their congregation, and there's a scripture that says the sheep know the voice of the shepherd, but the reverse is true too. And so as Sister Annette was sharing her testimony, the voice that you heard was a member of mine who also lost a son. And it is the common cry of our members. And so your being here and your speaking to this issue is important for all who have gathered, because it is more than an issue that we simply hear about. It is an issue that is lived on a daily basis. We'd like to give opportunity for you to ask your questions of Secretary Clinton. We have two representatives who are coming with microphones, and you are invited to share with us in this dialogue.
Hello. I want to say Dontre Hamilton was a schizophrenic in addition to being a black man. I want to first say to anybody who's suffering from mental illness out there that you should not own a gun. You already have one strike against you. The gun is the second strike. And if there's ever an incident with the police, it's going to be very close to a third strike. That being said, I know the depth of fear and anxiety, depression, the feeling of persecution, and it's very difficult not to act out. And we're asking a lot of these men not to act out. And so I have to say, there needs to be hope. They need to be given something in form of opportunity in return for this perceived injustice. Can you speak to that?
Yes, and I'm very glad that you raised that, because you're absolutely right that we don't do a very good job dealing with mental health issues in our country still. And I've talked with Maria Hamilton. Her son did have some mental health issues. And he needed even more help and understanding, not 14 bullets. And in fact, the debate about guns has to include doing more to help people with mental health problems. But it also has to include the laws that we need changed to keep guns out of the wrong hands to start with. And too many people are trying to avoid talking about the law changes we need by talking about mental health. It's not either or, it has to be both and. And I really believe that the mental health problems in our country are being ignored. People don't get the kind of services they should. Even with the change in the law, and I'm a very big defender of the Affordable Care Act, it has made a remarkable difference in the lives of millions of Americans. But we still don't have what we're aiming for, which is parity. So if you have a mental health challenge, you deserve to get treated for that, just like if you have a heart problem or diabetes or any other physical condition. And so I want to do much more to help get those services for people. And to go to Gwen's point about training police officers, I have an understanding of why police officers, when confronted with behavior that they see as threatening and irrational, often coming from a mental health issue or an addiction issue are going to react. And often their reaction is to pull out their gun. So in addition to training about how to de-escalate situations, we need to help our law enforcement officers understand more about mental health problems, and so that they can try to deal better with what they are confronting. Because, you know, there was a recent incident in Chicago where a mother was feeling and actually was threatened by her son who had mental health issues and didn't know what else to do but called the police. And the police thought they were doing their job. They come, and this young man was threatening the mother, threatening them, and they shot him. So we have to do a better job helping our law enforcement officials know what to do. We have to do a better job in getting people into treatment that lasts long enough and is sustained to deal with anxiety, panic attacks, schizophrenia, bipolar, clinical depression, all of the problems we face. And we have to change the laws so that we don't have the rampant availability of guns and have this gun culture where using guns becomes, you know, the default position for everything. And so your question's a really important one, and I hope we do a better job across the board. Gwen, do you want to add something on that?
Many of you who follow what we do in Congress know that we did an omnibus instead of the 13 appropriations bills. But I did ask for an increase in funding in an appropriation bill for the Mentally Ill Offender Treatment and Crime Reduction Act, which was folded into the omnibus. I do want to say this, though. Even though we got that increase, I am very, very reluctant to assign all of the violence around guns, that being that folks are mentally ill. Again, I just want to turn our attention to the fact that guns are too readily available. We have too many loopholes. And in fact, in the case of Dontre Hamilton, yes, that was a contributing factor that he suffered from mental illness. But still, that police officer was fired from the police department because he was not following his training even, and that we do need to examine police procedures with regard to use of force. And that's what Maria Hamilton would say if she were here.
She would. Could I ask you, Annette, you know, you heard Annette say that she is a captain in a chief in the Chicago Fire Department. And as somebody who herself and now supervises firefighters who respond to all kinds of situations, do you have some thoughts on that too?
Well, I think one of the most important things is respecting different people. And I think most of our problems get into us just kind of thinking like when you have a gunshot victim, you assume they're a gang member. And that's not true. And so it's easy to just write off people based on what you perceive or what you see, because everything you see in the media is negative, mostly about young black people, right? So now, if you're a cop, if you might be, and we do really good, I would say the fire department, we do a pretty good job. We have a little hiccups here and there, but we do a pretty good job because we respond to a lot of mental illness, we respond to a lot of gunshots, a lot of violence. I mean, unbelievable. I was just working on the west side. We had 4 shot at one time. Then they're shooting at the police officers. So coming from a family of fire and police, I kind of see both sides of this because they fear for their lives as well. And you know, who do I call when I need help like that? The police department. I trust that they're going to do the right thing. So we're going to have a few bad apples, but I would say overall, they do a good job at protecting us. And we got to understand, out there in the streets, it's rough because they are shooting at them left and right. Some of them, they're afraid. They're afraid. You know, and I don't think I could ever do that job, you know, but we are going to have some bad apples really bad apples that cause a lot of pain, a lot of grief, and take a department and just tears it apart with the actions of one person. But we need to work together with the police as a community. We need to go to these forums that they have. We need to put our input in about what we want to see, what we demand, you know. And on the other hand, we got to help them solve these cases, because a lot of our crime in our communities is done by a few people. And guess what? We know who they are. But we ain't saying nothing. So we really have to become part of the solution and not part of the problem. Don't just sit at home and just say, oh, too bad, so sad, or go pat a mother on the back or hug her, because guess what? We don't need your hugs. We need your support. We need you to get out there and do something to stop all this madness. Police in our communities, because you know we can do this. We can do it. We've come from struggles so far. You know that, from slavery to now. People say, what can you say about it? You can say a lot about us. We're resilient people. So, we absolutely cannot let our ancestors down. So let's not give up hope on our police, on our young people out here on these corners, because we have to hug them. We got to love them. We're in this position because they don't have love.
Come on.
That's the problem. Just think about it. If somebody told you, we love you, you're valuable, you know, you can contribute to society, they wouldn't be out here killing each other. You know, they don't even care if they get shot. And I'm going to say one more thing. We just had another 16-year-old killed at Julian. And I stood there with those young people outside because I just want to show support. And I watched those young people. They weren't even crying. Only a few of them were crying. I'm like, where are we at? Where are we at when a young person gets shot, and we're just like, we go right on about our business? We should be upset. We should be upset about this. We should be more than upset. We should be angry. And we should go in and take these communities back and just stop sitting up in here. I'm saying, church, reach out to your community. Don't be in a community where you're not outside. And I'm not saying it's yours, but so many of us go to church on Sunday and we amen, and the rest of the week, we ain't doing nothing. We ain't doing nothing. I'm sorry, I go to church. So.
Another question?
Madam Secretary, I'm Patricia Chu. I'm so proud to be here, by the way. I really adore you. And I can't wait to vote for you. So I also want to say I am a naturalized citizen beginning a year ago. So this is going to be my first vote, and it's going to be for you. My question to you is, again, about the police brutality. I came from Africa 10 years ago looking for a better life, and just what I've been seeing in the news has just been heartbreaking. The police shooting people. I don't know what your message is for young people as well as the police for short term. I know for me, I usually, if I get stopped by the police, I try to be really nice to them, because at the end of the day, I want to get home. Because I know that my family, especially extended family back in Africa, are looking forward to me. So I want to know what your short-term message is for young people out there, as well as what are the very short-term fixes that we can do to avoid these shootings from the police. And also, I hope I can take a picture with you at the end.
Well, thank you, and I am delighted you're going to vote and honored to have your very first vote. Thank you for that. I want to pick up where Annette led us, because, look, we've got to do a better job, both in working with our police and, yes, retraining, and frankly, weeding out the bad apples, people who, for whatever reason, should not have that kind of authority over others. But the vast majority of police officers, it's been my experience, you know, they want to do the right thing, but they're often in really difficult situations. And so the training has to be ongoing. It's not just the police academy and never be trained again, because the situations that they're going to confront are changing so rapidly. The world in which we live is increasingly fast-moving. And the police need our support to do the kind of training and preparation to do the best job they can to protect us. So it's important that we rebuild those bonds of trust, and that the community reaches out, goes to those forums, invites police officers, and many congregations have police officers. Have them explain what it's like from their perspective and what they need from the community to help them do their job in as effective, safe, and hopefully violence-free way. And then I think it's also true that we've got to figure out, somebody said, I think the first gentleman who asked the question, we have a shortage of hope in the lives of too many young people. The leading cause of death of young African American men is homicide. That is more than the next 9 causes of death combined. And we have to make the changes in our criminal justice system so nothing happens to people like Sandra ever again. But most of the killings are done by civilians. So we've got to do both at the same time. And we need to figure out how we get the community to go and embrace and confront and encircle these young men who are the principal perpetrators of the violence. Because Annette's right, most crime can be traced to a relatively small number of people. And so how do we identify them? How do we divert them? How do we confront and help them? Maybe the best thing is, to try to find some kind of job training program that we don't have anymore. Maybe it's getting people back into school. There's got to be giving people the chance to learn a trade and put them to work, which helps a lot of young people find a purpose in their lives. We got to try all of this. One of the things that I am determined to do, if I am your president, is to find more ways of both diverting people from the criminal justice system into other alternatives and providing more second chance programs for people coming out of jail and prison so that they have a chance to find a good future for themselves. So I'm really looking for good programs that we can point to, and I want to mention quickly 2 of them, because maybe there's something that can be done here in Milwaukee, because we talked about mental health, we didn't talk about drugs. And drugs, the selling and using of drugs, is at the root of a lot of gang violence and a lot of individual violence. So we got to do a better job in dealing with drug addiction. And I've seen some good programs that are out there where people are being, given a chance to live in a campus-like setting where they get counseling, where they get job training, where they get a chance to overcome their addiction. And I want to see more programs like this. And then I've seen some really good second chance programs. I visited one in Charleston, South Carolina, about 50 men who live together in a cooperative way. And they're put to work in the businesses that the nonprofit runs. So, for example, they run a moving company, and they have ex-offenders working in the moving company, and they set up a bank account so that the money that they earn will be there when they finish the program. So there are some good creative ideas out there that can give people hope, can divert people, can give them a second chance. We need to do much more of that. And your points are about wanting to get home safely. That's what we want for everybody. And we want everybody to be able to get home safely.
We have time for one more question, but let's hear from Janine.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to you, sir, congratulations. Congratulations on being smart enough to know who to vote for. but I want to say to you, my daughter was trying to get home safely, okay? She had valid license, she had everything she was supposed to have. So I say to you, don't get confused with what's really going on here, okay? There are stops that are being made for no valid reason in a lot of these cases. And at the end of the day, what I would say to the youth, to the adults, to everybody, please, if your insurance is not in order, don't drive the car. If your license is revoked, don't drive the car. If your license is suspended, do not drive the car. That's it. Sandy was on point with everything. If you saw the tape, she asked the gentleman 14 times, "What am I being apprehended for, sir?" And she was being apprehended for telling the gentleman, "You're not going to do it to me today." Okay, that's what she was apprehended for. So everybody wants to get home safe, but just know you could have all your ducks in a row and still not get home safe. But understand, if you're riding correctly, whatever happens, happens. And the main thing that I want to leave with all of you, even though the tragedy is deep and great, God allowed it, and it was for his purpose, and that's why I'm able to stand.
We want to thank our Congresswoman who fights for us courageously in Washington. We want to thank Annette for sharing her story. We want to thank Geneva for being such a fighter. And we join them in hope, and we join them in courage and solidarity. And then we want to thank Madam Secretary Hillary Clinton. Thank you all for coming, and certainly God bless you as you go on your way.